Hi, I'm Patricia Greenberg, and welcome to It's Okay to Be Old, a show about all things aging well. My guest today is Rabbi Richard Address, the founder and director of Jewish Sacred Aging. Now, a little background. Rabbi Address was ordained at the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion in Cincinnati in 1972. Having served the Reformed Jewish community for over 3 decades, he went on to receive a certificate in pastoral counseling from the Postgraduate Center for Mental Health in 1998 and his Doctor of Ministry from Hebrew Union College in 1999. He also received his honorary doctorate from the same institution in 1997. Welcome, Rabbi Address.
Hi, Patricia. How you doing?
Great, thank you. So happy to have you here. Now,
Nice to be here, or there, or wherever we
yeah,
are.
wherever we are in the cyber space.
Right, right.
Sacred aging is exactly that. It's sacred and beautiful and a blessing beyond words to live a long life. So tell us about what you do.
Well, one hopes it's sacred. We all know people for whom getting older has been a challenge. Um, I just actually was talking to somebody earlier today who's having, you know, difficulties with health, et cetera, et cetera. But certainly we've been blessed now with the boomers of longevity and the challenges of what longevity means. So my job really with Jewish Sacred Aging, which we started about 12 years ago, is to try to work with congregations, Jewish organizations, synagogues, groups, seminaries, to try and understand how we can deal with what is now, according to the last population survey, over 50% of the American Jewish community, people over the age of 50. The majority of the Jewish institutions, synagogues, et cetera, um, still have yet to realize this because most of the orientation and finances go to younger people. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But this is a brand new cohort, now a multi-generational cohort of older Jewish adults, and they bring a wealth of life experience, opportunities, adventure, um, and are responsible, I think, for a huge spiritual renewal and um, creation within the American Jewish community in the last half century. So that's a summary of stuff.
Yeah, it's astounding to me that the generation, the boomers, who were forever young and weren't going to get old, anti-establishment, you remember crystal clear, from early 60s on, are now our elders, now our seniors. And
Right.
we are losing, if not lost, almost all of the generation ahead of them, their parents, the immigrants, the people who came and built America. Very, very different mentality, very different outlook on the world. That the generation before the boomers accepted aging very, very well. The boomers do not. So I'm sure you encounter that all the time.
Well, yeah, we encounter it, but all of a sudden in the last, I'd say 10 years, our generation has figured out that we're going to die.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as a result, there has been an increase in the numbers of organizations that are dealing with end of life issues, questions and answers about legacy, advanced planning, et cetera, which is part of a lot of what we do in workshops and programs. But that reality, not the least of which was forced upon us by so many of our friends who are dying.
Yeah.
And so it's
Exactly.
hard to ignore.
And it's we're all being told, hurry up, make those plans, do it now before it's too late. So there's this angst surrounding it as well. It's not something that's done in a relaxed state. It's something that's done in a state of frenzy. Well, what am I going to do? Where am I going to put my things? Who's going to get my stuff? So what I'd like to tell everybody is just relax about it. It'll all be fine. And it's so much easier to do than one thinks, right? Is to put
It,
that, it's just a willingness.
yeah, and in essence, it's Jewishly, it's a responsibility you also have to your family.
Yes, absolutely. Rabbi Address, I jotted down a few topics I'd like to touch on for our audience, just kind of open the conversation among all of us to be open about where we might be headed, in those stages of our lives. One thing that's coming up a lot is couples who are out of sync with the aging process. In other words, a long time marriage, one might be more vital than the other. One might want to spend the retirement years traveling the world. The other might want to stay home and knit or play golf. How do you address that?
Well, but partially it's also the physical limitations.
Yes. Hmm.
I'm sure you've dealt with all my colleagues, myself have dealt with in pastoral counseling situations where the health of one of the partners is inhibited and really does change, and there's sacrifices that have to be, compromises have to be made. Yeah, this is the longer we live, the more that this becomes a reality. So, and part of it is having a conversation. Part of it is really sitting down and trying to address the what ifs. You can't control the what ifs. You can't control time. Um, but you can at least begin to have an open conversation about, listen, what happens? I'm familiar with a couple right now who had to move into an assisted living facility because one of the partners Alzheimer's became very, very advanced, and
Hmm.
then one is living in one room, one is living in another room. This is not unusual anymore. And given the statistics that we're seeing, this probably also is not going to be that unusual. It's causing issues around housing, restructuring of housing. Um, this is really this is part of who we are, and you have to be able to address it. So when we go out and talk about things like this, about legacy, about um, how, how we manage these this stage in our life, the third or fourth stage of life, you have to talk about it, because the worst thing is you can do, as you alluded to, is wait to the last minute and there's a crisis. As you know, that's not the time to make substantive, really important decisions.
So this is an interesting question. So people are going into assisted living, and it's such a mixed bag, right? There's the connotation being put out to pasture to die. I'm going into it. I'm going to be ignored in a room, in a sterile hospital room without the people and things that I love. But the flip side of that is, they're safe. At least they're somewhere. They're not going to wander off, and God forbid something really bad happened to them.
Yes, yes.
But are these facilities designed for the person suffering from Alzheimer's? That they have, if the spouse is going with them, they don't room them together?
The more and more, again, I'm just referring to a couple I'm
Okay.
working with
Mhm.
that right now. That's
Yeah.
exactly um, in the CCRC, that they're continuing care retirement community.
Mhm.
They're now in assisted living. One of them is in independent living. The other one's in a memory care wing of the CCRC. This is not unusual anymore for people and families who are beginning to talk about this. You really have to do, the thing is, you have to do your research.
Yeah.
There's so many different variations on the theme. Some facilities cater to a certain higher socioeconomic level than
Mhm.
others.
Mhm.
Um, you have to do the research about their ratings, the nonprofit or for profit, their differences. We've done some podcasts on our Seekers of Meaning podcast. We've done some podcasts with people who have really been quite clear about the differences between for profit and not for profit or agencies. So there are competent elder care attorneys, there are resources available. And I always, when I work with couples and individuals and families, you have to do the research.
Mhm.
Um, you just have to, because there really is a variation on the theme. There really is.
And then, that kind of parlays into the terminal illness. When somebody has a terminal illness and one spouse was looking forward to spending the golden years in Tahiti, and here they are with, someone has an illness that
Yeah,
requires substantial medical care. And there's a movement towards aging in place, staying at home, bringing
correct.
bringing the hospital into the house. But there's issues with that. I see often. I talk to people because even though I come from a nutrition and fitness background and healthy aging, I talk to a lot of people about what they're going to do. And one of the things that people say, my own family members included, well, stay in your house. It's good for you to walk up and down the stairs. It's good for you to use the pool. It's good for you to take a walk around the neighborhood.
If you
Those are
can.
those are all good. But when you
Yeah.
can't do it anymore, the house becomes a nightmare.
Yeah.
Um,
If you can take the walk, or if you can go up and down the stairs, I've seen too many. If you could line up every colleague who is listening to this in a especially in a congregation, They've all visited people where the hospital bed is moved into the den
Yes.
downstairs because you can't go upstairs.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um, is it better to age in place? For some people, yes. For some people, the quote, well spouse really isn't physically or emotionally sometimes able to take care of a person. If they, especially if they can get up in the middle of the night and fall, there's so many. Look, every single one of these cases is individual. There's
Yeah.
no right or wrong. The caregiving thing, one of the more requested workshops we do is the art of caregiving, because everything we do is from a Jewish text
Okay.
basis.
Hmm.
And as I tell people, you can go to Barnes and Noble and read every single book on caregiving or caring for my aging parent. They're very lovely, except your case is different because it's you.
Hmm. Hmm.
Dynamics around the family, especially the family dynamics, impact that. For some people, it's to age in place and to die at home is a blessing. To other people, where they can't be taken care of appropriately, there's a Jewish value that says when you can't do it anymore, and the staying at home or trying to manage it myself now impacts negatively the person being cared for, it is appropriate to cede care to a third party because the value of health and dignity and safety is paramount. So that's why all these things have to be talked about, evaluated. Um, so many more organizations, individuals, healthcare advocates, elder care attorneys, clergy, individuals like yourself are actively engaged in working with families and saying, let's talk about your case. Because if your loved one gets up at 2 o'clock in the morning, goes into the try to go to the bathroom and falls, you're upstairs and you don't know about it. You don't have a
Hmm.
life alert. So what happens then? Um, we recently did a podcast with somebody who's an expert in the technology of aging, and she was saying that they're now working with sensors being put in these assisted living facilities or possibilities that will sense changes that if you're not even involved, if you fall or there's a change in breathing, it'll automatically trigger an alert. We're at the beginning of a whole new revolution about technology and aging, wearables, robotics.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, it's going to be fascinating, but this is real, and more of our generation are going to have to deal with this.
Well, I
Our
like this.
generation.
I'm going to be 65 this year in November, and I have
Lovely,
my
lovely.
Apple Watch,
Right, right,
and
right.
I am so thrilled to be alive. I'm so thrilled to be happy. I'm so thrilled to be turning 65. And I know a lot of people aren't. So I like the wearables. I like the monitoring of it because you can send it to your doctor, you can alert
Right.
the hospital. It's all fantastic. But this gets into the next thing I wanted to talk to you about is dealing with, okay, there's the ill or infirm spouse. There's the well spouse, or maybe not as well either. Sometimes it's a dual problem. Then there's the children who don't understand why my mother doesn't remember. I told her 100 times I'm coming over at 1 o'clock. And then the grandchildren, what's wrong with Bubby and Zadie? Why do they act like that? And this makes often the spouse and the children very resentful towards the ill or infirmed or elderly patient.
Yeah.
How do we address that?
Listen, it's
It's a big
scary.
question. I know it's a very
Um,
big
It's
question.
a, it's a semester, but look,
Yeah.
I'll give you a perfect example. When
Okay.
my mom, last 2 years of her life, dementia, I remember visiting her as she gradually declined, and then there was a rapid decline towards the very, very end. And I remember sitting in the parking lot one day after I visited her, where it was quite obvious that things were really going downhill. And the reality of the scare. Hey, is this going to be me? Is this me in 20 years or 15 years or who knows?
A very valid fear. Very valid.
And
Mm-hmm.
when we talk about this in the workshops, we spend some time saying, look, this when you're dealing with illness and serious illness, regardless of what age you are, this triggers, I think, within your own soul, um, perhaps one of those first glimpses of our own mortality. And so you have to be able to talk about that. You have to be able to be understand that you are vulnerable, that the more you have a conversation, I tell congregations all the time, you have to have these conversations on a yearly basis because people are going through this, and a lot of times they have no place to go, and they certainly don't understand that there's a wealth of Jewish tradition and texts that speak
Mhm.
about everything.
Right.
Um, so the psycho-spiritual component of this is absolutely imperative, and it's absolutely imperative to be addressed. And when we do workshops or webinars, invariably this issue will come up. How do I take off the mask of invulnerability and begin to face the reality of what is possible? The flip side of this is we are living longer, we are living better. It is a blessing every day. The Jewish tradition says when you get up in the morning, you say Modeh ani lefanecha, which loosely translated into New Jerseyan is, "Hey, I got up. Thank
Yeah.
I have another." And I can't control it. I can't control what's going to happen. I can't control what's going to happen when the phone rings. I can control right now, today. And the tradition, which is huge on health and wellness, which is right up your alley, talks a lot about what you put into your body, how you treat your body, how you clean it. Maimonides is filled with essays on aerobics from the
Yes.
from the 13th from the 14th century. Um, and we don't do a good enough job teaching people to say, listen, so you're 75, 85, 95 years old. There, keep living.
Yes.
Keep
Yes.
living.
I want to add to that, and something there's so much to talk about. Like you say, each topic is a semester, is that we're finding now science is showing that at any age you can see improvement through uh,
Oh,
good eating, sleeping, fitness, interaction with your community. I don't have to tell you this.
oh,
And I'm astounded. I've been traveling around doing speaking engagements, and I've been going to JCCs. And I went to one in Long Island last week, and the gentleman that's heading up the senior activities program is 90, and he's
yeah.
working there, and he's heading up the program. I mean,
It's
it's astounding to me. I was over the moon to see that.
no.
Yeah.
We I just did a conference at the JCC here in Cherry Hill in January on health and wellness, and they had about 150 people show up. Talked about all the things that you talk about in
Hmm.
your work about nutrition and and look, to plug it, on your pod, you're going to be doing one of our Seekers of Meaning podcasts on April the 4th, where you go into a lot more detail on this. But it's important to remember, for people who are listening to this, our tradition is filled with texts and opinions and moods celebrating the idea of being active. My own personal theology, I call the theology of relationships, because as you point out in your work, and as every article right now that's coming out, one of the keys to sacred aging is really being involved with other human beings, the
Yes.
relationships, the socialization, which is a problem post-pandemic with their epidemic of isolation. But that's why people are encouraged to join groups, um, to join a faith community, which they've proven now will extend life, because you need that social interaction. One of the great fears that a lot of us are now seeing of people who are beginning to deal with dementia is that they're isolated, not only spiritually, emotionally, but physically, medically, but then get cut off from other people. And there's some experiments in communities in Europe that have communities just of individuals dealing with this, and they encourage each other. We just need human interaction.
Absolutely. And it that one person can make all the difference in the world, that is nice to you, that says hello, that greets you, whether it's, the supermarket or you're out somewhere. It's just this human kindness goes a very, very long way. Just having somebody there to be, and we're losing that. And hopefully we're going to get that back, because manners have gone out the window, as you know. I don't have to tell you, that's a whole nother afternoon. But,
Let's try boarding an airplane.
yeah,
Yes, yes.
Yes,
or
exactly.
or driving on I-95 in Florida. Um,
And so that brings me also to talking about self-inflicted ageism. This again is another topic that requires, I'm too old to do that. No one wants an old person around. Oh, just leave
yeah,
the kids alone. Those weird kids. I loved being around my grandparents. I loved their stories, and I was very blessed. My parents got married very young, and their parents got married very young. So I had a grandmother till I was 54.
you're lucky.
She lived to be 98. And then my mother in law, who's lived in the house with us for 7 years until she died, lived to be 103.
Wow.
And she suffered from dementia, and it was very difficult. And we had that situation where the kids were like, "What's wrong with grandma? How come she doesn't answer me? And how come she doesn't?" And we had to be patient. But I always say the blessing in that in the long term is the kids will have known their grandmother up to an older age
Absolutely.
most.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And if I could do it all over again, I would. We put a hospital bed. We converted our laundry pantry area into a bedroom. So she was on the first floor. And I'm telling you, it didn't come with difficulty. For sure. There were situations where we were like, what do we do? But nobody wanted to put her in an assisted living. And she lived at home until she got very ill, went to the hospital, and she ended up dying in the hospital, which I think is a blessing. The family may not always want someone to, especially young children, don't want to see somebody die in the house. We had dogs. The dogs looked out for her. It was a beautiful experience for everyone. And I would never abandon any of my family members because unfortunately, and maybe you could talk me through that. I do see, and I know it's not reality, but I do see putting someone in a facility as abandonment. I have difficulty with that.
Yeah.
So that makes it harder on you. So these are questions, like you say, you have to talk about while you're well. Um, Everybody's going to get resentful if they're too tired or incapable of taking care of the problem at hand, and they're, so to speak, stuck with it. So what do we do about people who are saying, you don't have to care about me anymore, I'm old, I can just go somewhere and die, go live your life, nobody cares about me anymore because I'm old? Or they go in the store and they are treated badly and they go, well, I'm old, so they're not going to pay attention to me anyway. This is, I think, Richard, this is my next profession is fighting ageism, is finding a whole nother avenue of that because it's bad. It's
No,
really bad.
very bad. And this almost, you talk about a self-fulfilling prophecy. The Again, coming to this issue from the purpose from the point of view of our tradition
Mhm.
is squarely against that type of self-fulfilling prophecy. It basically says you're given this gift of life, enjoy it. Never stop growing, never stop learning, never stop taking a risk. It's Genesis 12. We have texts that we don't have the time to go into all this. It's a whole thing. Um, but because the United States is still somewhat of it, not somewhat, it's a lie, ageist society, and there's still a preponderance of worship on the young, and look at all the anti-aging phenomenon, et cetera, et cetera. I personally, I mean, I've had this conversation many times about people going into the active adult over 55 communities and just shutting the door or not being around other generations where we can learn from. Um, there is this sense of I'm too old to do this, I'm too old. The tradition says, no, you're never too old. You may have to do it differently. But so you want to learn a language, you want to take this, you want to volunteer, do it. Don't
Mhm.
be afraid to take the risk. But it's counterintuitive to our society, because we also have this. This is a Richie Address generalization, so you can edit it out. But for some people, there is this sense of what I call the inevitability of invisibility. That
I like
um,
that. Yeah.
it comes from an old film about the third person invisible. And I remember this with my mom. She was in the hospital. The doctor came in. I'm standing at the door. She's in the hospital room, and the doctor talks to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Which brought,
Yes. 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 Yeah.
which brought my mother, who took no crap from anybody, said, "Excuse me, doctor. I'm the patient. I'm here. Talk to me." And it was a very, very interesting lesson. But I've talked to many, many people. Well, yes, a lot of people who sometimes say, yes, the older I get, the more invisible I become to other people. So part of that sacred aging, active aging, healthy aging movement is to really say, no, I'm here and I have a brain, I have life experience, I have something to offer. Don't just put me aside because I'm not going to be doing that. I'm here. Talk to me. Um, but institutions do that. They'll say, okay, people in the 80s, it's very nice. We have a nice club for you, as opposed to saying, you're 85 years old, you've built a company, you've lived your life, you have experience. Talk to me. Speak to the religious school kids, teach a class, do something that they can learn from you. And it is very individual. Not everybody can do it, health, and et cetera, et cetera. But there is a need for a real revolution in the way we value and honor, to honor and respect. It's right out of the fifth commandment, older adults. And because there's so many, because it's now the majority of the Jewish community, this is why Jewish sacred aging is keeps me busy.
It's interesting you say about the assisted living and then the active communities 55 and over. They have boards and they have rules and regulations and they have all this like no kids under 18 in the pool. Well, you're absolutely right. Bringing your grandchildren, even your teen grandchildren, over and being involved and being in the community and people being around them is so therapeutic for older adults. There's no question about it. But that sweet spot of being 55 to let's say 70, you don't think you're old. You don't think you're an older adult. There's no, the designation from the 1933 Social Security Act was 65. You turn 65, you're out to pasture, end of story. People like myself are just getting started at 65.
Correct.
So they don't
Correct.
like being called an older adult. I get a lot of resistance. And you and I had talked earlier when you interviewed me about the cohorts and that group born the people that were born in late 50s, early 60s, like myself, they're the most resistant to aging. They're the most anti-aging group because, oh, they're 70. I'm only 60. That's way far away. There's this interesting and like, yeah, you wake up tomorrow and it's going to be here. Um, that group is the most difficult and the most ageist, I find. And it's so sad for me to see somebody at that age. It's not necessarily a 20-year-old being obnoxious to an 80-year-old. It's a 50-year-old being obnoxious to an 80-year-old.
Yeah, it's one of the things that we talk about a lot is we probably have to invent a new vocabulary.
Yeah.
So for example, it would be a perfect example. The word senior citizen is being phased out, thank
Yes.
God.
It's a bad word now. Yes.
Well, I just turned 80. If
Mazel
somebody,
tov. Mazel
thank you.
tov. Yeah.
If somebody walked up to me and say, Richie, you're 80 or you're a senior, you're this. I said, I'm not a senior. I'm 80. I'm 80 years old. That's all. I'm
Yeah.
working. I'm moving. I'm traveling, writing. Blah 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 blah. There, and because as we talked about before, the from 50 to wherever is now multi-generational cohort,
Yeah.
and they do have different life experiences.
Yes. Yes.
Um, where try this just with music and pop culture. Our music, which is probably still better than anything that's being played today, you can weave a whole class and a series of conversations around the movies and the music
Yeah.
that impacted our generation. And when you unpack it, you'll learn a lot about the differences in those how that generation and our generation dealt with it and looks at who we are. It's just it's just a fascinating thing that we don't have the time to go into it. But again, it's another class. Um, but as I say to many younger people, look, you're still playing our music.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. The impact was huge, is huge, continues to be huge. I always like this frame of reference. When my husband was a teenager in Los Angeles, he was an usher at the Hollywood Bowl when the Beatles came to America.
I remember I
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
that's
And
where I first saw Billy Joel at the Hollywood Bowl.
yeah. And it's interesting because, he's now 78. And he'll tell these stories, and there are kids. I mean, everyone knows who Paul McCartney is now because he just keeps reinventing himself in such a beautiful way, right? That and Billy Joel and all these other these big names from the 60s and 70s. Yes, they're way more influenced by it than they realize. There's no question.
Yeah.
I hear my daughter when we're in the car singing along to the 70s, and I think that's when I was a teenager. How do you know that? Because the cover bands that are her age are releasing all these songs. So it's very, very cute to
Look,
see.
and look, Patricia, they for the Oscars, they trotted out Mick Jagger.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's like it's anyway.
Well, he's 81, and we saw them at the new SoFi Stadium here, and
Yeah.
everyone in the audience was 20 years older than me. I'm telling you, I was one of the youngest people there at 81
No,
years old, and he was on the stage like my husband was. We were all had our tongues hanging out. How is that? Oh, funny pun with the Stones, right? But we were like, wow, 81 years old, and he's doing calisthenics on the stage.
no, it's a whole very different
Yeah.
world.
And I
Yeah.
wish, and I hope to think that he is out there advocating uh, a pro-aging movement and not an anti-aging movement. So it's very interesting. I love that you were always and continue to be out in the community, above and beyond the Jewish community. You were awarded a best practices in older adult programs, first place by the National Council on Aging and Interfaith Coalition on Aging. And now you're a media personality, so you're doing great
Hardly.
things, great things. Tell me how that works with interfaith. Do you find people are open to our traditions and what you have to say?
I'll tell you I just flashed on an experience. I did 2 weekends in the before and after COVID, as we now pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, as we count time now,
Mhm.
to this wonderful church community in London, Ontario, up in Canada, and they wanted to learn about the Jewish approach to this, but we talked about just the common themes. Some of the texts are the same, but they were interested in how we interpret certain texts and new rituals, because there's an explosion of new rituals. What's one of the workshops that we teach a lot. And there is this common ground because regardless of the religious tradition, the spiritual question, regardless of who you are, whether you're agnostic, atheist, humanistic, devout Roman Catholic, agnostic Jew, whatever,
Right.
the question for us has to do with the one thing that we cannot control, no matter how rich you are, how much you pray, and that is time.
Mm-hmm.
Time. We can't control it. You can control a little bit about your health, what you eat, how your all this type of stuff. But none of us can control time. And the older we get, the reality of that really hits us square in the face because every single one of us, you, me, and anybody listening to this, knows someone who thought they had more time.
Yes.
So the spiritual question is, what do we do with the time we have left, knowing that we cannot control the time we have left? And that, Patricia, is universal.
Right. There's a movie I watched recently called Here, and it's with
Oh,
Tom
it's a great movie with
and
Tom Hanks. Yeah, yeah.
Robin Wright.
Right.
I'd never heard of it, but I recommend it to people because it is a retrospect of a house.
House, right.
And it was an amazing, amazing story of all the history that went on and all the families and the lives they lived and what went on and through the generations. And I think they really nailed it, all the way back to Native Americans, all the way up to the current, and how
Right.
people live their lives and what that house meant to the people living in it. And I bring it up because the Tom Hanks character keeps saying, where did the time go? Where did the time go? It went by so fast. Where did the years go? Our daughter's already grown. Now she's in college. Now she's in law school, and we're all feeling that. I mean, I obviously remember the day my daughter was born. She's about to be 24.
Yeah.
And, it does go by in a flash. And I love that you said, how do we slow that down? We slow that down by caring for ourselves physically and spiritually on a daily basis. That will not slow it down, but it'll make
No.
each day more meaningful and each hour more meaningful. Our infirmities, our limitations, our outlook on aging play a huge role in how well we age. We're seeing that now, and that is proven. If you feel like it's horrible to age, and this is a horrible dilemma I'm in. It will impact you on many levels. So I personally I'm on a mission to see that every older adult feels good about their life at any age. That's what my work, It's Okay to Be Old, is about. So, how do we, Rabbi Richard Address, as a team of pro aging advocates, get back to that fundamental concept that being alive is wonderful at any age? What are the things that we can be telling people that?
I think you just have to keep on it because there's a lot of negativity around it in the society. But I'm very pleased that slowly but surely, and I have my cynical reaction to this is, even the mass media people have realized there's a lot of older adults there who spend money, and
Yeah.
so we're starting to see TV programs, miniseries on Netflix, movies like the Tom Hanks movie, which is a really nice film that portray older adults not as the doddering old people,
Yeah. Yeah.
as sexually active, intellectually active, doing. There's a movie, Thelma, about a 92-year-old woman who gets scammed and then goes after the scammer and by her on her motorcycle. I mean, Hollywood would not have made this movie when we were kids.
I think
Uh,
she kills him in the end. Yeah. Is that?
I don't want to give
Oh,
away any,
yeah. Okay.
but so the with the Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin thing, which is the Kaminsky method,
Yes. Yes.
um, shrinking. There's all kinds of these shows now that are beginning to portray with people. The shrinking thing. The guy has Parkinson's.
Yes.
Much. So you're beginning to see Hollywood or mass media saying, "Look, there's an audience here. We just can't do the stereotype, but you
Right.
got to keep
Right.
talking about it. You have to keep just getting involved and talking to enough people, organizations, because I think my feeling is that our generation wants to talk about this. They want honest approaches. I'll give you a perfect example to our religious tradition. Many of us were raised with fairy stories, miracle stories, this, and they're lovely when you're 6 and 7 and 8. But when you're 65 or 75 and your friends are dying and you have to deal with a cancer and you want honest answers from a religious perspective, not made up stories and miracle, but you want to, how can this text talk to me in a way that I can understand it and incorporate it into where I am so that the disease does not define me, but I define myself. That I don't live my life as a projection of other people's desires, but I live my authentic self. For some people, they never do that.
Right.
They never do that. And so this is why we always go back to texts, because the texts are so evocative and in many cases revolutionary because we've never taught them this way. It's a very, very difficult challenge, Patricia. It really is. We talk a little bit about in our work about tensions, about the tension of acceptance or
Yes.
giving or surrendering.
Hmm.
Part of the healthy sacred aging is say, okay, I'm dealing with this issue. I'm dealing with this chronic disease. There's nothing I can do about that. I cannot let it define me. I'm still going to be able to do things. The other tension of holding on and letting go. What do I need to at age 65, let's say, saying, I need to let go of some of this stuff in order to live healthy. I can't continue we see this a lot in family dynamics of estrangement issues.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just need to let go of stuff so that you can move forward in your life. It's not easy. I'm not saying it is, but people come to that conclusion of saying, um, relationships change. The gray divorce phenomenon, which is
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
a pandemic in many ways around baby boomers. 65, a person 55 years old, the kids are off to college. God willing, they'll have 30 more years of life. I always wanted to do this. We've grown up. we've talked about people who are writing and studying this phenomenon, the solo ager issue.
Yes. Yeah.
More and more people who have no family, no spouse, no children, and they're now concerned in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. Well, who's going to take care of me? Because my friends are dealing with the same stuff. So this whole revolution in longevity is fascinating. It's
Well,
absolutely fascinating.
I'm a big advocate. I call it the Golden Girls model, is that if a group of men or women or mixed or however you want to do it, there's a couple of people that alone go live together, get a roommate. That's
Yes,
just not reserved for college students anymore.
yeah,
And it's a nice thing. You could see share the expenses, the cost of living is lower, and you're looking out for each other. And you don't even have to be best friends. You don't have to be a couple. Just there's somebody there in the house that can press the button if you need it. You know what I mean? It's and people are resistant to that. And I think that that's going into an assisted living or a community or having a roommate just gives you a lifeline to the outside world.
no, I think the roommate concept I think is going to grow in popularity, and it's fascinating that way back in the 70s, I think it was in the 70s, the Norman Lear sitcom The Golden Girls,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that was so ahead of its time. When you start and figure it, if you go back now and watch the reruns, because it's all on, it's
Yeah.
one streaming service, it really speaks to where a lot of people are,
Yes.
and it makes sense. It absolutely makes sense.
There's so much to talk about. It's a bottomless pit, and you're going to come back on the show. And we're going to continue to have this conversation because, like I said, it's a bottomless pit, and we're both here to really, really help people embrace that. One of
Amen.
the things that all of the spiritual, every organized religion, every woo-woo, everyone that's out there, the common thread I'm seeing is having gratitude for what you have. And I think that's exactly what you've been saying all along is what do I have today? What are the positives? And let's focus on that, not at the expense of anything else, but saying, what do I have today? What can I do? What can I learn? What can I be? How can I improve myself? I think there's room for that at any age.
Absolutely. It's gratitude. It's that tension now that it's getting a lot of play in the press and in conversations. I'm sure you do it, talk about this on your workshops, the tension between health span and
Oh,
lifespan.
yes. Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
And that really makes a lot of sense to a lot of people because the technology is moving us forward, but if you can maybe live to 120 soon, but if you want to, I'll live to 120 if I can live like I was at age 50, not curled up in a fetal position in a nursing home. That's not living.
But that's an either or. I
It's not.
feel like even if I'm 110 or 115 and I am somewhat frail, um, there are people who are driving at 100, there's these outliers out there now. Um, I feel that still to be here on this earth is of value, regardless of yeah, it's something that my husband and I share. And so that's another conversation eventually.
Very much, yes, a very
But
much another
it's
conversation.
very I really valuing every day that you're here and not wishing that you were dead is a wonderful accomplishment. To not say I want to die. A lot of older people, I've heard that in my lifetime. Oh, I just want to die. I can't stand living like this anymore. And it's tragic and it's sad. And I think exactly what you're saying about lifespan and health span. There's the emerging subspecialties within medicine now that are talking about this, about functional medicine and looking for people to live much longer, even with limitations. So it's very important. We haven't cracked that nut of immortality and living forever. Whether or not we're meant to, only time will tell. But to be here every day and it's a blessing, huge blessing. Rabbi Address, what do you have coming up to share with us?
Some teaching, some travel, some scholar in residence work in the next couple of months. So, and mostly focusing on the website, jewishsacredaging.com, and the weekly podcast called Seekers of Meaning, which you are on April 4th.
Yes, good, wonderful. I'm looking forward to hearing it as well. Thank you. And
Thank you.
I want to ask you, what do you like about getting older?
That I'm alive. That sounds silly, but it's not. I mean, I have no idea what's going to happen. Already I have friends of mine who passed away, friends of mine who are dealing with some serious illness. But I've now in the process, and by the way, this part of the turning 80 triggered some of this. Um, the realization and holding on to what I call quiet victories.
Hmm.
So a greater appreciation of getting up, of the sunrise, of being with my grandchildren, of hanging out with them, of driving them, and just playing, having fun with them because they're getting older now. They're teenagers, so
Wow. Mm.
almost like you have to make an appointment.
Yeah.
Uh, but those little moments, being with friends, going out to dinner with some friends, and just having a good time, and trying to step back a little bit of worrying too much because I'm a news junkie and I
Yeah.
do too
Mhm.
much reading and watching news, but also understanding that there's things I can control and there's things that I can't control. And that every day is a blessing. And every single day, no matter what age you are, our tradition says you always have that opportunity to do a mitzvah, to do
Yes.
something,
Yes.
to do something kind with or for some other person. And that really makes a difference.
Absolutely. Makes you feel so good about yourself and the world.
Yeah, it's a gift.
For more information about Rabbi Richard Address and his work, you can go to www.jewishsacredaging.com. And I want to thank all of you for listening to my show, It's Okay to Be Old. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And for more information, you can go to my website at patriciagreenberg.com. Rabbi Address, thank you so much for joining us today.
Patricia, take care. Stay safe. Stay well.
Thank you. You too.